Hello, everyone. I, Council President Walsh, call the June 10th Committee of the Whole meeting to order at 8:11 p.m. I guess technically we went into session earlier to do our facility tour, but we are coming back to our regular agenda items at this point. As a reminder, we continue to have remote aspect to all of our meetings, so staff and members of the public may be participating in tonight's meeting remotely via WebEx. There are multiple public comment opportunities at tonight's meeting. So there's going to be a general public comment opportunity at the beginning, and then again after our one remaining agenda item after council has done our question and answer period. So we're going to start with public comment. And do we have anybody who's signed up to speak?
Yes.
Yep. Okay. So members of the public may address council at this time in person or virtually. Those who signed up in advance to make comments will be called on first. If you're joining us virtually and would like to make comments, please raise your hand, your virtual hand. If you're on the phone, that's going to be a *3. I guess you could raise your physical hand. We'll probably see it, but if you joined by computer or smartphone, look for the hand icon, or you can send our host a chat message. And if you're in the room and did not sign up, I will go ahead and ask for speakers before closing that portion of the meeting. So the clerk has already indicated that someone signed up to speak, but I will just say anybody who is online, if you go ahead and raise your hand, we'll get you in the queue. So you're invited to address the council regarding matters that are directly related to Issaquah's programs, projects, services, or events. Comments related to political campaigns will not be permitted. Please direct comments to the whole council and not to individuals. And while this is not a question and answer period, we will contact you to follow up if needed. When recognized for virtual attendees, you'll unmute your microphone. For those in person, come up to the lectern and press the button until your microphone turns red. State your name, address, and relationship to the city. Speak clearly and pause frequently, and limit your comments to 5 minutes. If you are attending virtually and don't respond when your name or phone number is called, the meeting will have to proceed. You're encouraged to rejoin the meeting if able. Personal attacks, obscene language, derogatory remarks, and disruptive behavior will not be permitted. So, clerk, can you identify the first person who has signed up to speak?
Yes, Carol Simpson.
Good evening, President Walsh, council members, the city staff, and those watching remotely. My name is Carol Simpson. I am a new resident of the Vineyards neighborhood of Newcastle, Washington, and a former city council member of the city of Newcastle from 2008 to 2019. I am here this evening because King County just last week amended their park rules to allow e-bikes on their paved trails. I would like you to remove electric bikes from shared pedestrian trails. My brother-in-law, Jim Gordon, age 63, was killed by an electric bike on the Marin County Trail in California on August 31st, 2022. He was walking home in the early evening after having a beer at a local restaurant. His home, a nearby houseboat, was just yards away from where he was struck and hit and run electric bike rider. Jim never regained consciousness. He was brain dead. It was a traumatic experience and a huge loss for his wife, his father, who was age 94, his mother, who was age 92, his 2 sisters and his brother, his nieces and nephews, and great-grandniece and nephew. His wife is still adjusting to her loss of the love of her life, her income, her companion. She still lives in their houseboat, which borders the trail, their first ever home, purchased that same year. She still sees the walkers and bikes passing by. I don't know how she does that. The e-bike rider was identified, a commuter, age 40. He sustained injuries and lived. Ironically, he went to the same hospital where the EMS ambulance took Jim A police investigation did not yield enough evidence to support the prosecutor bringing criminal charges against the bicyclist. Electric bikes do not belong on pedestrian trails, period. I do not want anyone to go through what my husband's family went through: the sudden death of a loved one, the immense grief, loss of a son, a husband, an uncle, thoughtful author, valued library employee. He didn't live to collect his pension, see his home completed, publish his novels, celebrate more Christmases with his nieces and nephews who love their Uncle Jim. He didn't get to spend retirement years with his wife. Concerns have been raised about children and the elderly on trails with bicycles. Jim was a full-grown, physically fit adult man who was killed by an electric bike. Obviously, electric bikes do not belong with children, older adults who cannot jump out of the way. I cannot jump out of the way. And as a postscript, I don't remember when, just these last 2 years, I haven't been able to run or jump. Oh well, I'm 74. Jim didn't get the opportunity to jump out of the way. He could have. Please, council members, adopt a no electric bikes on shared pedestrian trails policy in your city of Issaquah. Please urge King County to reverse their park rules allowing electric bikes on urban trails. Electric bikes can kill people. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your commentary. We appreciate the perspective on that. Thank you. Do we have anyone else who's signed up or indicated a desire to speak?
No, and it appears that we only have staff with us online.
Okay. Okay. Well, always good to hear from the community and recognize things that are going on in the area as King County has made that change. It looks like we have one item remaining on our agenda, which is COM 0053, Enhancing Permit Review Efficiency. And that's going to be presented by Director Dollywall, Community Planning and Development Director, along with some of the consultants who I'm sure you will introduce.
Good evening, council members. Tonight, Ref Tellis, Sam Lieberman and Susan Healy Keene is with us from our consultant team to present, so I'll turn over the presentation to them. From staff, I have James Gray, our building official, and Emily Appleton, our engineering manager, also online. So this is a culmination of the work that we previously shared with you and the work that Ref Tellis did for us. They're here to share their findings. So without taking too much time, I'll turn it over to Sam.
Thank you, Minnie, and good evening, council members. Just by way of brief introduction, I'm Sam Lieberman. I'm a manager with Ref Tellis. Ref Tellis is a local government utilities management consulting firm. I have about a little more than 14 years of experience as a local government consultant, and over the last probably half a decade or so, a particular focus in the development and review sphere. Before I continue, I'm going to let my colleague, Susan Healy Keene, also briefly introduce herself.
Good evening, Council. I am Susan Healy Keene, and I'm a special advisor with Ref Tellis. I retired after 30 years in local government, most recently as Community Development Director for the City of Beverly Hills in California, and the City of West Hollywood, also in California. So it's been a pleasure to work with the Issaquah City team.
Awesome. So I'll just briefly go over the agenda for our presentation. I'll say, at the outset, if you have any questions as we are working through this, please stop us and ask. No need to wait until the end, though you're certainly welcome to. We'll obviously take questions then as well. We'll talk briefly about the purpose and the background of this project, so I'm sure you're all well aware of. How we went about the project, our methodology, some of our high-level key findings, and then we want to talk a little bit about what we heard through our discussions with staff and with customers and applicants, and then we'll walk through the recommendations that we are making to help improve the permit process. So in March, the city engaged Raptellus to conduct a comprehensive review of the permit process. The initiative really driven by you all and your commitment to enhancing the performance and ensuring compliance with the new SB 5290 land use permit timelines passed at the state level. And so as Issaquah continues to grow, it's imperative to have a permit process that's not only efficient, but transparent, user-friendly. And so the primary objectives of our review were to improve the overall efficiency of the process, reduce delays, streamline workflows, enhance customer service, and ensure applicants receive clear and consistent and timely information. Of course, ensure regulatory compliance, particularly as we move forward with the timelines mandated by SB 5290, and really to reduce the complexity and some of the unpredictability that exists in the current permit process. So how did we do that? We started with a data collection phase. We reviewed numerous documents at the city, the current standard operating procedures, existing permit guidelines, workflow diagrams, and data and performance metrics that we were able to retrieve and that the department had on hand. Really helped us understand the current framework and identify some high level and initial areas to pursue. We then conducted 28 in-depth interviews with about 35 different staff members. This is both in CPD as well as the Community Planning and Development Department, as well as other relevant departments in the city, such as Public Works, Parks and Recreation. These interviews really provided some valuable insights into some of the day-to-day challenges faced by staff and their perspectives on what works well and doesn't work well in the current process. The staff are live the process every day, right, and have wonderful ideas about what challenges them and are sitting on ideas for improvement. And lastly, we then conducted customer focus groups, we were able to engage with current and former permit applicants through a series of focus groups, helped us understand their experiences, their frustrations, their suggestions for improvement, and really was essential in helping us understand the customer journey through the permit process. We then conducted a series of process mapping sessions with staff that execute various permit processes and brought staff from the various disciplines together to walk us through in great detail the sort of minutia and the steps that they have to take to carry out their permit processes and deliver on and assist customers with receiving their permits. Really helped us identify through that process inefficiencies, bottlenecks, and is a really helpful visual representation of the steps that staff have to go through. So through that, we learned a number of things. One, there's a lot of things that the city is already doing very well, and a number of strengths in the permit process. The city already incorporates pre-application reviews, which really help applicants understand requirements and potential issues before they submit their applications, and is a really proactive best practice. Concurrent reviews, so simultaneous reviews by the different entities that have to conduct a review, is a best practice. Helps reduce overall review times and improves coordination. One thing that struck us prior to starting our work and during the work was that Issaquah is already ahead of the game in having implemented a really robust online system for applicants. We have done quite a bit of this work where we encountered agencies that through the pandemic were forced to move online and tried to fit a square peg in a round hole with paper processes, quickly turning into an online system. And Issaquah was already ahead of the game, and really providing that service and having a process that fits the digital world that we live in, and is consistent for applicants across the region in the way that it's done through my building permit. And frankly, the dedication of staff, the commitment and technical proficiency of the staff, really significant assets to the department. But we did find some challenges, of course, right? Processing delays exist, despite these strengths, primarily due to incomplete submissions, the peer review processes, and other inefficiencies in the process that we'll discuss. There's inconsistent communication to the applicant that can lead to confusion and frustration. While the robust online system exists and is useful and received high marks from applicants, various platforms that are used in the process by staff don't talk to each other, not well integrated. That can cause workflow disruptions. It leads to manual data entry burdens. And there are a number of outdated standard operating procedures that contribute to inefficiencies and inconsistencies in application processes. And so our recommendations really strive to address a number of these challenges that exist in the current process. I'm going to have Susan talk through the feedback that we heard.
Thank you, Sam. As Sam mentioned, we interviewed 35 staff members from the various divisions of community planning and development, as well as other departments, which included IT, public works, and parks and community services. And we were really looking for themes that we heard. And the 8 items that you see listed on the screen represent themes that we heard from our staff interviews. And I'll just briefly go over what we heard on each of those. We heard on incomplete plans and standardization that acceptance of incomplete plans often hinders the review process. And standardizing a more comprehensive preliminary review at intake could ensure that all necessary information is provided and appropriately routed based on permit type. It's very difficult for reviewers to make a complete review of an application or a submittal without all the information they need. Permit coordination. We heard from more than one staff member that there is a need to reinstate a role to oversee permit timelines and facilitate coordination across division, and that would indeed improve overall process efficiency and help with coordination. Checklists and SOPs, or standard operating procedures. There are updates needed both on checklists and also just generally in order to align with the new codes. Especially it was noted that standard operating procedures for permit technicians and engineering staff would be helpful to update in order to streamline processes and to ensure uniformity. The physical separation impact, it was very interesting. As you know, staff is separated physically across several different facilities, and it does impact internal communication, trust, and the ability to collaborate with one another. And so that was noted by staff. Integration and automation issues. The city operates with several platforms like My Building Permit, Trackit, Bluebeam, and SharePoint. And all of these systems need to work together. There is an absence of automation, although many of them are automated, there is an absence of automation in systems like Trackit. And what that necessitates is the need for manual data entry, which slows the process and also creates the possibility for error. User difficulties in IT support. When there is an issue with IT, there's oftentimes IT support is unavailable to really troubleshoot timely to resolve any issues. Also, the selection of options for permit types on documents in My Building Permit is limited, which can lead to confusion on the part of applicants. They're sometimes forced to just enter other, which makes it less clear when those projects are submitted exactly what they are submitting. Inconsistent review times do exist, it was noted, for several reasons, one of which sometimes is that reviewers may not be checking My Building Permit and Trackit dashboards, and to keep that the submittal moving through the process. Also, at times, consultants are not being held accountable to deadlines. The consultant peer review process is lengthy and often lacks clarity regarding who within the city is taking the lead on making sure that those consultant peer reviews get processed and are timely. And then internal processes and role clarity. There does seem to be still some confusion in some areas. So there's a need for a deeper understanding of the roles and responsibilities, and as well as a common understanding of the limits of discretion that are now allowed under the new code. So next slide. We also got feedback from customer focus groups, and we got a lot of positive comments from the customer focus groups. These 8 items, I would say the top 4 were all very positive. The customer focus groups expressed that they felt there was clear communication, and the documentation requirements for submissions were clearly communicated to them, and that the My Building Permit platform is user-friendly. As long as you're experienced in using it, then you can count on facilitating a smooth navigation through that. There were positive comments about the significant improvements that have been made since the new director came on board, that the organizational structure and efficiency has been improved, and that has contributed to a more streamlined permitting process. There were kudos shared by the customer focus groups about inspections. It was noted that inspections are conveniently scheduled and executed, and with the building permit review process was generally very positive, particularly noted the performance of contract reviewers. In terms of understanding informative resources and positive trajectory, the focus groups noted that the zoning maps and usage notification provided by the city are informative and helpful. And there was general consensus by the participants that the city is on a positive trajectory toward making improvements on the permit processing. There were, of course, some not as positive comments, and there was concern about the review timelines. that there was a need to be more consistent in achieving the target review timelines. And there was the perception that there was the need for better project management oversight in order to ensure that there was timely and coordinated review. Understanding requirements and external peer reviews. The participants expressed challenges in understanding the full requirements for what needed to be submitted for land use applications. And it was also noted that the external peer reviews are oftentimes very time consuming and quite often exceeded the duration of time given for city reviews. Also noted was they, so not specific to necessarily processing, but it was noted that high permit and peer review fees disproportionately affect small or individual applicants negatively and create financial impacts to that group. And then impact fees, this group noted, they felt were considered excessively high for the value provided and led to concerns about the affordability and fairness of the fee structure. So that's just kind of a note of something to look to in the future. So with all the input that we received, Raftellus came up with a number of recommendations that we'll go over for you. First of all, we do need to highlight that there needs to be an update to the submittal guidelines. As I mentioned, incomplete submittals are a common problem, not only in Issaquah, but in other communities as well. What happens is incomplete submittals lead to delay and multiple review cycles. If all the information is not present for a reviewer, it automatically gets sent back, and you've already extended the review time there. So providing clear and comprehensive submittal guidelines will help applicants know that their applications are complete and accurate. It will reduce the need for multiple review cycles and streamline that process. And it'll make it a more efficient process with delays reduced and a better experience for both the applicants and city staff. Next slide, please. This is interesting. It doesn't happen frequently, but when it does happen, it's sometimes a challenge. And that is in sufficiency review. Sufficiency review is looking to make sure that everything that is needed to do a complete review is there. And for sufficiency reviews for building permits, site work permits, and construction permits, those currently occur in the My Building Permit system. However, in those cases where permit technicians are unsure about the sufficiency of an application, they will email reviewers, which leads to an informal communication that is difficult to track. So if you were to eliminate the email process for sufficiency reviews and formalize these reviews in Trackit without triggering the official acceptance of the application in MVP, this approach would then enable sufficiency checks to happen, but also at the same time to have the ability to track that sufficiency review. And so with improved tracking and enhanced communication, better follow-up, things will move more quickly through the process. Next slide. We're recommending that there be enhanced applicant communication. Currently, when there a letter goes out to an applicant saying what items may be missing. But what is not included in that is the next steps. So what we're recommending is that there be a template-based letter that not only highlights what may be missing, or if it is complete, what's complete, a letter that outlines the upcoming steps and key considerations to help the applicant so that there are no surprises and there's transparency in what the city is looking for. And this proactive communication, we feel, will help build a more collaborative relationship between the city and its stakeholders. And again, reduce delays and improve overall process efficiency. So sometimes it's just reaching out to the applicant rather than doing this back and forth, but making it clear to the applicant what the next steps in the process will be. As Sam mentioned, there are pre-application meetings now, and that's a very good best practice. But we note that they don't happen in all circumstances. We believe establishing regular pre-application collaboration meetings, especially with internal departments, with public works, and with parks and community services, will help improve coordination and ultimately reduce review times, because you can identify then potential issues and pitfalls early in the process and identify them before they become bigger issues. It will improve efficiency and clarity, reduce delay, and enhance the overall quality and compliance of projects.
You know what, I'll just add, Susan, we say formalize here because currently pre-application meetings with internal departments happen on an informal basis, sometimes for some projects. And when we talked to those internal departments, they all said, well, when we do those meetings, they're really helpful. And really this recommendation is to formalize them and require them for city capital projects to really enhance the trust and the team building and ensure that everybody is on the same page for these city capital projects.
And that internal communication between departments, particularly on city projects, helps move it along so that there are no surprises to any city departments that are doing the ultimate review later on in the process. They have the information early on. So this next item, we recommend to examine the public noticing efficiencies. CPD handles a lot of public noticing. This includes meeting notices, site postings, mailings. And although the city fairly recently now uses postcards to reduce labor, the amount of development activity remains challenging. So at times we heard staff may need to process and mail over 700 notices. And this, of course, takes away from their ability to do their other duties, including review. So enhancing efficiencies by implementing perhaps batch processing for mailings and establishing scheduled mail runs and identifying the need for public noticing earlier in the process so it's not a last minute hurry up to get it out could help manage those high volume periods. Again, it's about making sure that the work that needs to be done gets done at the earliest possible time, but also to free up staff for their core responsibilities while still keeping the community well informed. This is a very significant one that we feel is incredibly important, and that is to hire a permit coordinator. Due to some transition in staff members over the years, there's a gap in managing the tracking system, and that's impacting the efficiency of the permit process. So we believe a permit coordinator will be able to ensure system accuracy, oversee performance, coordinate necessary upgrades, develop performance data reports, and facilitate relevant training. So this role will enhance the overall efficiency and reliability of the permit process. It's going to streamline the project guidance, because this is somebody that will be able to see where an application is going through the entire process. We'll be able to communicate with applicants to provide that information so reviewers are not taken away from their duties to respond. And again, will enhance the efficiency and reliability of the permit process.
I'm gonna pause for a moment on this recommendation because I am embarrassed in realizing that I'm missing a slide with a very important recommendation, and so bear with me here. One of the recommendations we made in the report is to streamline the third-party review process. This is the peer review process that Susan mentioned. When an applicant is in a critical area or has to develop a particular report for their development, a geotechnical report or others, the city requires that those reports get reviewed by a third party to review the report developed by the applicant's professional. That process to get those reports peer reviewed is time consuming and inefficient as it stands today. And this is where Susan mentioned that often those third party peer reviewers are not on the same timeline as the city. And frankly, part of the cause of this is not identifying early enough in the process and starting the peer review process as early in the process as possible. Staff know when an application is received and when they get the materials that there will need to be a third-party peer review of a particular report. However, staff may not begin to look at a particular application until it reaches the time that they're ready to in the queue, right? They've got a big list of projects they're working through, and it might be 15 days into a review cycle before they get to a particular project, it's been waiting for them to look at, and then, oh, by the way, we need to get this peer reviewed, and now we need to understand how much it's going to cost the peer reviewer. We need to understand what the peer reviewer's timeline is. We need to get a purchase order completed with that peer review. That piece of the process, and I'm embarrassed that I don't have this in there. This is a major recommendation. That piece of the process is inefficient and very time consuming. And from what we heard from staff and applicants, can be the cause of going past the review timeline because of the time that is taken to wait until the identification of a peer review is needed, and the time it takes once you've identified it's needed to get the peer reviewer to start. And so one of the recommendations that we are making is to identify that need for a peer review as early as possible at intake and begin that peer review of those technical documents almost immediately. We're recommending a number of process improvements to reduce the need for waiting for purchase orders and for getting those out the door at the outset, getting that peer review timeline started sooner in the total process will have a major impact on the overall cycle time for any of these particular projects. So I apologize that I don't have a slide for this. It is in the report, and I wanted to pause here as I realized we didn't have it and touch on that. The process improvement for peer review is an important recommendation and one we made and identified through the process mapping sessions. Now I'll talk about performance measurement. There's currently a lack of of systematic tracking of performance measurement in the process. Really, performance measures need to be established to track things such as review times and approval rates and customer satisfaction on a standardized basis. It needs to be regularly monitored, which can help the city identify areas for improvement, really make some data-driven decisions, and allocate resources more effectively. We found through the course of this work, and Susan mentioned it with the IT issues, there's one point of contact for obtaining data from the system. And this person's time is at a premium. Their focus is not community planning and development. And although it used to be, and so we had, through our work, difficulty in obtaining data. Part of that, the suggestion for the permit coordinator role is that they'll take on the ability to pull data from the system, but really having performance measures that are aligned with what the state develops, as they have not yet, but as they do develop the particular measures to align with SB 5920, to really, again, make those data-driven decisions. Performance measurement also provides a basis for accountability, right? It ensures departments that are involved in the permit process are really working towards common goals, and will provide some clear metrics for assessing efficiency and effectiveness, and help ensure that continuous improvement and better service delivery. We believe, and Susan mentioned it from what we heard through the interviews, right, that there are a number of outdated or unclear standard operating procedures, and that really leads to inconsistent processes. And we heard it in the process mapping sessions when we asked folks how they do things. We would hear from two different people with the same role doing something a different way. And so updating those standard operating procedures, is important. It'll help promote fairness and transparency and efficiency in the process. Providing clear and updated standard operating procedures can help reduce delays, improves customer service, ensures consistency in the application processing, and really also helps staff understand their roles and responsibilities better, reduces the likelihood of errors and inconsistencies. And as Susan mentioned, it's really important that the SOPs are regularly reviewed and updated. And again, we see that as part of the permit coordinator's role as well. Staff within CPD are experienced and technically proficient, but the department structure, and this is not unusual in permit processing, but really leads to a compartmentalized expertise and a segmented approach to project reviews. And there's sort of a lack of a unified perspective that they're all working towards the same overarching goal. Interviews with staff highlighted existing tensions and a lack of trust between different groups, which really discourages collaboration. Physical separation of team members, further entrenches this division. So really to counteract these challenges and to help foster more integrated departmental culture, we're proposing establishing quarterly continuous improvement process review meetings, and to really serve as a platform for staff from all different disciplines within CPD to come together in a structured way to discuss and strategize and implement process enhancements. We found in the process mapping sessions, and this happens quite a bit, and it's one of my favorite things to do, you bring sort of the disparate staff together and they get a chance to step back from the day-to-day and really talk about what it is that they do and what's frustrating them and why. And there's a shared understanding there that didn't exist, prior to us conducting those process mapping sessions. It brought staff closer together. helped people understand certain frustrations. And so, really formalizing that and establishing a cadence, we think is really important. And in addition, the new land use code allows for less discretion, which is a departure from the previous code. And so giving staff that time together to help them talk through the new code in regular face-to-face interactions will, again, help them get a deeper appreciation for each other and break down those silos, promote a cohesive team environment, improve communication. We really feel strongly about bringing staff together to help with the cultural component of working together as one team towards a common goal, which then breaks down those silos when you have issues with certain permits, right? And don't feel like you're bothering someone by asking questions, right? There's a need for enhanced training, and this goes not only for staff but also applicants. Staff and applicants need training to navigate the process more efficiently. Providing ongoing training opportunities can ensure that staff remain up to date with the latest regulations and technologies and best practices. These trainings should include cross-training to promote a better understanding of various roles within the department, again, foster collaboration, and really improve the skills and knowledge of staff, but also contribute to a cohesive and effective team. For applicants, we see it in really providing complete information at the outset. Maybe it's training videos on my building permit and frequently asked questions, but giving tools for applicants to come in ready as they are preparing to submit for a permit application. We discussed some of the issues around information technology in the department. And there was a former staff member who worked in CPD, who is now in IT, who has sort of a laundry list of improvements that could be made to the system that frankly he does not have the time to make. And so we feel that a lot of those automations that Susan talked about that don't exist could exist. And hiring a contract software developer, not a full-time staff member, somebody to come in and make a number of these fixes to the system that are already known by staff. That and this would be someone that has experience in permitting software, that can really come in and make a number of information technology fixes to improve some of the automation and reduce some of the manual data entry that slows the process. And so really hiring a contract software developer to come in and sort of work through the list of already known issues and already known improvements that just don't have the time to make with the staff currently available. It can really make some improvements to processing and efficiency and cycle time. So really for us, there are several strengths, a lot of areas for improvement. The recommendations that we make, we think will enhance efficiency, customer service, predictability of the process. As Susan mentioned, hiring the permit coordinator role to be a liaison with customers and staff, ensure that permits are working their way through process in a timely fashion, staying on top of the review cycles and ensuring that staff are conducting the reviews in a timely manner, ensuring peer reviews are occurring, being able to pull data system. We see that as a linchpin in our recommendations and a needed role that for the city. Really, the improvements to the peer review process we see as really paramount to shaving time off of many of these reviews. We see the peer review process as one of the major issues in turnaround time and cycle time, and frustration both with staff and with customers. And then culture building and getting everybody in the city to work as one team towards one goal will really help improve the process. And so we think the next step will involve sort of prioritizing these recommendations, developing an implementation plan, and we look forward to the questions about the work that we've done.
Excellent. Thank you for both your report and findings and the presentation. So, excuse me, we are now at a point for council questions. Anybody want to start? Councilmember Hall? No.
Sure, thank you. Thank you so much for the presentation and the detailed report. It made for fun reading over the weekend. I have just some clarifying questions. I hope that's okay. So the first, I actually did have a question about the external peer reviewing process and kind of, is that really within our wheelhouse to control? And you were getting into that a little bit in terms of what's available to us, being really clear with communication with them about kind of the state mandates and requirements for turnaround time, but then also identifying upstream when we're actually going to need that. Is there anything else beyond that because it does seem like your comments at the end really struck a chord with me. It seems like that's one of the major points of this is the peer review process. So are there any other things that we should be thinking about creatively with regard to peer review? Or?
Councilmember, the major issue with peer review as we see it is, one, it's not getting identified early enough. When it does get identified, the current process that they have to go through to get to identify the peer reviewer that's going to conduct that review, to get a purchase order completed and signed so that they can then start that review, is also taking upwards of a week to 10 days. And so now, like, you're in a review. I've submitted my application on day one, and it might not start to get reviewed until day 15. And now we're looking at day 25 to get the peer reviewer started. And so we really feel pushing it all upstream, identifying it immediately, and then we've identified a number of improvements to reduce time it takes to identify and contract with essentially those peer reviewers. I think that will fit it into the needed timeline. You're right. I think within any contract, another potential idea as you renew sort of these larger contracts with the peer reviewers is building in, some carrots and sticks, right? And ensuring that there are cycle times that they agree to meet to, right? That when they are told go, they will get it turned around in a certain time, and building that into contracts when you renew those contracts with those peer reviewers can be another option. Being able to hold them accountable to something, because right now, as we understand it, they're not held accountable to a timeline. It's essentially, how fast can you get it done? And they say, well, we can get it done this fast. And we say, well, thank you, and send it off. And whether they meet that timeline or not, you don't have any accountability mechanisms. And so building those into a new contract could be helpful, but really, pushing it all up to the front and getting them started immediately will really help reduce the overall cycle time.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. The contracts, building that into contracts is a good idea too. Yeah. So what's the second question? The multiple review cycles. This was definitely something that even us as council identified as a concern when this was last before us. I remember us seeing the big on the screen where like a process map, like flow chart essentially, and saying it looks like it's going back a lot of time. So I was just wondering, and maybe this is more for Director Dollywall, when we had previously identified what kind of the process improvements that we'll start to work on in the meantime while we find this consultant, did we have something in this space, or is this going to be kind of a brand new, are we going to be working on the multiple review cycles?
How to
starting
reduce the
now?
number of
Yeah.
rounds of review.
How to reduce?
Yeah, so I think one of the recommendations of having a complete application in the beginning will help reduce the number of rounds of review. There's still information sometimes, you know, when the first first set of comments go out, the applicants have to address them, and they may change a few things in that iteration. So it may still need a second round, because the new stuff is showing up for the first time. But the goal is that if we get a complete application, we give a more holistic review of everything, which I think staff tries to do it now. But if there's missing information, they can really reduce that. That will help the number of rounds of review. The other, I think, is more customer service. We are encouraging staff to call the applicants and, you know, have and better communication tools are the other avenue that can help. Sometimes it's easier to just put a comment on the plan to send it out for corrections, as opposed to calling them up, having a conversation, understanding what their thought process was, because, you know, staff can sometimes understand what was produced maybe isn't, you know, what the applicant was thinking and what the code requirements are. They can be a back and forth conversation. So those are some of the strategies to reduce the number of rounds of review.
And these are strategies that CPD is already mindful of and has been thinking about since the last council touch?
Yes.
Is that right? Okay, got it. Yeah, that was my question more is, have we kind of started thinking about what to do, or is now that we have the recommendation, are we going to move forward with reducing?
Well, now we have more tangible things to do too. I think we were working on all fronts when we first embarked on process improvements. Like for the consultant team, you know, we had a smaller group of consultants who got really busy during peak times. So we did do an RFQ to broaden the bench, because if they are on vacation or something, we can actually reach out to more more consultants for the same, you know, if it's wetland peer review, we have 5 of them as opposed to just 1 of them, and then we can spread it around. So we've done some of those strategies to help with the peer review aspects of it. And then, but we need to do more in terms of formalizing. The routing happens early on. The contracts get updated at the beginning of the year, so that we're not into contract cycle update as we are looking at actually giving them a green light to start looking at the plans. So some of those strategies we've started implementing, but this will help us kind of focus on and really, you know, take a look at it for that piece.
Thanks. No, I'm glad to hear that, and I completely agree. Yeah, this should definitely help with focus forward. And then, so I guess back to Reftelis now. Is it okay if I have 2 more? Anyone else? Okay. Performance measures. Just to clarify, is the recommendation to wait for the Department of Commerce to create and then align whatever our performance measures should be with however they're measuring success, or to adopt or use some of what you've drafted in the appendix, or both?
Both. There's no need to wait for the state, certainly, but when the state does develop their metrics, you know, you all will want to be aligned with those. But I think that's going to be a subset of a larger group of performance metrics to help Minnie and her team, Emily and James, I see you're on, you know, really help manage their staff in the department and understand throughout, you know, a year how their team is working, and are things getting better or worse, improving. And customer satisfaction is an important one that, you know, certainly won't be included in what the state has, that Minnie's team could start working on immediately as well.
Okay, appreciate the clarity there. And then the last one is probably for Director Dollywall or City Administrator Bobkowitz. Councilmember Orr. So one of the questions about the quarterly meetings, it seemed like the intent in the meaning behind that was really about creating more meaningful like engagement face to face with people to talk about like roles and responsibilities and get on the same page. As we're considering moving general government into new office space, CPD would be part of that, right? I mean, we would have potentially more interactions and engagement of CPD staff through that action as well. Are we seeing that as a potential solution to this as well to complement?
Councilmember Hall, members of the council, yeah, we are. We are not going to go back to 5 days a week at the office, though. So I think one of the things that Minnie has been working on is to try to coordinate best as possible when people are here so that there is overlap. So it's not a matter of one planner's here each day, 5 days a week, and they never see each other. So we're doing that. The inspectors are at Tibbetts Manor. That's not a long-term solution. So as we look at general government, we'll have office space available for the entire department. I think again, I don't want anyone to think that this means then we're going to have everyone here 5 days a week. But certainly there'll be more and more opportunities to be together.
Okay. Yes, very good. And didn't want to indicate that I think coming back 5 days a week is a good idea either. So I appreciate your clarity on that. Thank you very much, Raftalis, again for the answers and for the very detailed report, and of course, Dr. Dollywall for all your work.
Councilmember Wright.
I just have a couple of questions, and thank you, Councilmember Hall. I was coming to riff on a little bit of what you were talking about earlier. So, but one of the things I wanted to get some sense from you is how significant of a performance barrier was the physical separation of staff? I mean, was it a big deal, a little deal? You know, how important is it that they be co-located? Because I mean, as Councilmember Hall was talking about, we're looking at space, and so this is a good time to have an understanding of what the impact is.
I'm gonna ask Susan to speak to that, but I think it's something that we heard through our interviews and could feel a little bit in the process mapping sessions we conducted. Susan.
I think that staff finds workarounds, if you will. I mean, obviously, they call one another, they email one another, and so forth. But it's always better if you have a definite time when you gather all the people that are involved in this process. Again, Sam mentioned this. You want to get to a mentality where we're all in this process together. And the way that you help reinforce that is have designated times when everyone gathers. It doesn't need to be everybody every day is in the same space to make that work, but it is important to at least designate that there are certain times when all the people involved in the process meet. So I think to answer your question, I don't think it's necessary that everybody is all in one place. I mean, pre-pandemic, of course, it's always easier to walk by a person's desk and go, "Hey, I just remembered I was looking at this application." That's all, those casual conversations help, but I don't think we're there anymore. And we're going to have to find specific times when people gather to talk about projects.
Yeah, I think that's interesting, and I think that is going to actually segue really nicely into my next question, because I think this is where you start doing technology-mediated interactions instead of in-person mediated interactions. But my second question for you is, you mentioned the hiring a contract developer. Do you have any idea of how much that would be? Is that one person for 6 months? Is it one person for 6 years? Any kind of order of magnitude on what that would involve?
Yeah, our sense is on the former suggestion. It's one person, probably closer for 6 months to a year to work through sort of a backlog of improvement ideas that already exist, that staff have come up with, that the current staff member that is assisting with some of the technology has. So I don't see that as a long-term thing, but rather to help make some immediate automation improvements and others within the systems that exist as they are today.
And then I want to follow up on kind of that line and pull on that thread for a second. Did anybody talk to eCityGov Alliance about where they're going with my building permit? Is there any way to leverage them? And we can't be the only one with these problems or challenges.
Yeah, so, there's multiple staff from our city that sits on eCityGov, different committees. We have our building official, James Gray. On the code committee, we have Keith Toomey from our IT department that's part of the whole thing. And we have Autumn Monahan that is actively involved and engaged, and so is Gus, our IT director. The eCityGov had an RFP out for a consultant they were seeking someone to help with the MVP portal and then the whole tracking. So there's work occurring on that front as well. I think that's a separate conversation we can brief council on at some point. Yeah, but there's staff involved in what's happening in the eCityGov area.
Okay. Great, that's all I got for right now. Thank you.
Anybody else with any questions? I'm seeing head shakes. So I assume there are no public around for public comment? Okay, then any feedback? Okay, Councilmember Hall.
Just really quick, again, thank you, Raftalis, for the work. Really appreciate it. And thanks for all the city staff who participated in the surveys or in the groups, and then also, of course, the customers, people in the community who are part of this. I think I just wanted to say that there are some policy relevant things that we can pull from this that would be important for us to talk about at budget. So I just wanted to make sure to talk about that on the dais, that if we're not going to talk about it this coming budget season, that it's living somewhere, so we know that we should talk about this or hire this work that's actually related to council, because most of these recommendations are really more administrative, and we have all the confidence in the world that you'll move these recommendations forward and have very successful outcomes. I did want to highlight, though, that there was one piece of feedback in the process improvements that we received about how not all staff feel that their concerns are understood or addressed by leaders in the city. I think that was what it was. And so I'm not sure if there's anything that can be done differently from a leadership perspective, but perhaps that's just being more mindful about how can we create more opportunities to listen to staff when they're highlighting concerns or when they're highlighting potential improvements. I don't know what that would look like day to day. You would. So I just wanted to make sure to highlight.
No, absolutely. Well. Thank you for that. Yeah, we absolutely want staff to be empowered to make the changes. So I had the same question for Raftalis. I think in terms of what exactly does this mean? Because we would love to have staff come up with solutions, because there's nothing more joyful than staff saying we want to make this improvement, this, like this. And so we want to give them all the tools we can for that objective. For sure.
And let me just add, there's been a lot of change in our community planning and development department over the last few years. And with that change, there's challenge issues, there are trust issues, there's change issues. And as I think we all know, everyone approaches those kind of situations in a different way. Minnie has been very forthright. She came here with many years of experience as a planning manager, understands the issues that we've been facing. Then we ask her to do an entirely new land use code. So, the dust is beginning to settle on a lot of these things. Change is not quite as scary. There have been opportunities where trust has been extended and people feel good about that. So this is definitely still a work in progress. But what we needed from Raftalis, which we got, was some very specific, tangible improvements that we can make. And so the commitment Mayor Pauly has to this is to move forward with that. We will do what we can without additional budget resources right away, and as we are now working on 24, 25, and the timing of this is very purposeful. We knew we needed to get this to you about now as we start looking at budget issues come to you at the end of July, kind of with the landscape of what we'll be facing. This is all part of that. And so we appreciate Raftelis's good work in making sure that the results were available to you at this time. So it remains a bit in progress. There's been a lot of change. I think the entire way the department is managed, the way it approaches projects, you know, it was DSD. It was about development services. It was not about the community. And, you know, just that simple change was the beginning of a lot of change as far as focus on what we do. So always will be a work in progress, but I'm feeling very confident with Minnie's leadership, with her management team, now with some very specific recommendations, we'll be able to do a lot of good work.
Councilmember Ray?
A couple thoughts. This is kind of my hobby horse, this particular topic, so bear with me. But a lot of the recommendations make a lot of sense to me, but there are a couple I just want to call out. One is standard operating procedures. Nothing is going to be more effective at moving an organization than having standard work and a standard way of doing it. So right on there. I think the idea of continuous improvement is really good. I think quarterly continuous improvement is kind of silly. Quite honestly, I think continuous improvement, the word continuous is the operative phrase here, and it's not sporadic. So I would look at ways that you could make that part of the culture of the organization, that we are always looking for small incremental changes, not trying to do things on a timeline, because then it becomes forced. I think I like the idea of a contract software developer, but I'm not 100% certain. And the one thing I have a lot of grief with is hiring a permit coordinator, because whenever I have a process and I have to hire someone to coordinate that process is broken. So fix the process, don't hire a coordinator. So that's kind of my big takeaway on that, is I would have a hard time getting on board with that unless I knew that everything was done that made those processes absolutely bulletproof. And I think if you did that, you wouldn't need a person to process it or coordinate it. That's all I got.
Anybody else? Okay, I will throw in just how impressed I am with how specific this is, and how I can definitely see this, these recommendations being something that you can take a checklist to and go, okay, these are the things that we need to work on that will help make our employees' jobs easier, that will help make the permit process faster, that will help improve customer service, et cetera. So I appreciate that. One thing I don't think anybody mentioned is all of the improvements that have been made thus far, and the data being pulled for 2024 and even 2023 that shows how many days of improvement that you've made to building permits and land use permits already. So I just wanted to also call that out and appreciate that, because that shows how hard at work you guys have been doing the work on the ground already, as the report and interviews have been pulling through. So I wanted to say that appreciation as well. Okay. Do you guys have what you need from us? Anything else?
No, I think we've got what we need. Wally?
Again, this is one of Mayor Pauly's top priorities for 2024. It's certainly been the council's main concern, one of its main concerns. And I think we are now have the tools that we need just to continue our work. And as we look at 25, 26 budget, we will certainly be coming back with issues, but a lot of this is not money related. A lot of this is I think many of you have pointed out, it's organization, it's processes, procedures. And so we will work on that right away. And as we look at budget issues, if there are appropriate things to bring forward, we'll do that. So thank you.
Fantastic. Well, that is the last item on our agenda. We appreciate you guys staying with us. And with that, I will say we are adjourned at 9:25 p.m. Thank you.